The Alpha King's raven keeps revealing his secrets, and I'm the only maid who can understand it a true story, as it happened. Naomi did not ask to understand the raven. She did not ask for the east wing either, or the pre-dawn shift, or the bucket that always leaked from the left handle no matter how many times she wrapped cloth around it. These were the kinds of things that happened to people like her, quietly, without ceremony, as if the universe had simply looked in her direction and shrugged. She had been at Vale Palace for 3 weeks when it started. 3 weeks of stone floors and cold corridors. 3 weeks of learning which hallways had drafts, and which had servants who talked too much, and which had both. 3 weeks of perfecting the art of being invisible, which was, in her opinion, the only real skill a palace maid needed, and the only one worth developing. You stayed quiet. You did your work. You did not look at the Alpha King. You did not look at the War Council. You did not make eye contact with the wolf guards who stood at the end of every corridor, like decorative statues that could kill you. You definitely did not talk to the raven. But the raven, as it turned out, was going to talk to her. She was in the East Wing on a Tuesday morning. She only knew it was Tuesday because Tuesdays smelled like the kitchen's weekly bread bake, yeast and warmth drifting up through the vents, scrubbing the baseboard beneath the iron chandelier, when she heard it. Not words at first, just sound, low and layered, like a word that had folded itself in half. She looked up. The raven sat on the lowest arm of the chandelier, its feathers the kind of black that doesn't reflect light so much as eat it. It was large. Not terrifyingly large, she'd seen large birds before, had grown up near the border marshes where the migratory ones came through every autumn like black ink poured from the sky, but large enough that she noticed, large enough that the chandelier dipped slightly under its weight. It tilted its head. It said something. She went very still, because the something it said, the low, folded, impossible syllables it had just pushed out of its throat, she understood them. Not like you understand a word you've looked up in a dictionary. Like the way you understand your own name when someone calls it from a long way away. The meaning just arrived in her, like it had always been there waiting for the word to unlock it. He already knows your name. That was what it said. She stared at the raven for what was probably 3 seconds but felt like a season. Then she picked up her bucket and moved to the next section of baseboard. The cloth around the handle had come loose again. She rewrapped it with the focus of a woman disarming a very small bomb. The raven said it again. He already knows your name. She did not look up this time. She kept her eyes on the baseboard, on the specific gray water pooling near the corner where the stone had cracked slightly and not been fixed, on the way the water moved when she pressed the brush against it, pushing it toward the drain in the center of the corridor. Then he's got the jump on me, she said, under her breath, in a language she had not used since she was 19 years old, in the language her mother had taught her before the fire, before the night the border village stopped existing and she stopped speaking for 2 years because what was the point of words when all the people who understood them were gone? The raven made a sound, not a word this time, something closer to satisfaction, the way a lock sounds when the right key finally turns. She watched the gray water drain. Then she moved to the next hallway. She told no one. This was not a difficult decision. There was no one to tell. She had acquaintances in the servant quarters. Dara from the laundry wing who always saved her the end piece of bread at dinner, because she'd noticed Naomi never made it to the dining hall before the good pieces were gone. Old Pell the groundskeeper who nodded at her every morning like they'd made a silent agreement. The 2 girls from the upper hall who talked constantly and loudly about everything and were therefore the last people she would tell anything to. She had no friends. She had chosen not to have friends, the same way she had chosen not to own things she couldn't pack in under 3 minutes, the same way she had chosen jobs where no one learned her last name, the same way she did everything that kept her alive and moving since the night she left the border with nothing but the clothes she was standing in and the language in her mouth that she had immediately stopped using because speaking it felt like pressing on a bruise. The raven had made her speak it. She was not sure how she felt about that. Ding! The raven appeared again the next morning, and the morning after that. By the 4th morning, she had started talking back, not because she wanted to. Because the silence of the East Wing at pre-dawn was the specific kind of silence that got louder the longer you were in it, and the raven's voice, low and layered, folded in half, all consonants and compressed meaning, was better than listening to her own thoughts. It told her things. Small things, at first. The East Wing had not had a regular assigned maid in 11 months. The previous maid had requested a transfer. The one before that had also requested a transfer. She was the 34th person assigned to the East Wing in 3 years. Where did the other 33 go? She asked. On the 4th morning, her brush paused against the stone. The raven said, in her dead language, the language her mother had sung in, "They are fine. They simply could not hear me. They were moved to other positions." Moved where? Locations not well documented. She thought about this. That's not reassuring. The raven blinked one eye, which in bird body language meant approximately nothing, but in context felt like a shrug. "Right," she said, and kept scrubbing. Well, on the 7th morning, the raven told her the king's name. She already knew the king's name. Everyone knew the king's name. It was on the royal crest above every entrance to the palace, carved into the stone in letters 2 feet tall. Ares Vale, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, Sovereign of the Packlands, Keeper of the Old Covenant. But that was not the name the raven told her. It told her his other name, the one that predated the title, the one from before he was a king, when he was just a boy in the mountains who talked to birds and didn't yet understand what he was. She did not repeat it. She would not write this down anywhere. Some things, she had learned, you carry quietly. Anne. She did not see him until the end of her 3rd week. She had seen him. Technically, she'd seen his back at the morning staff assembly on her first day. The broad line of his shoulders, the dark coat, the absolute stillness of him while the head housekeeper read assignments. She had seen him from 3 hallways away once, his silhouette passing a lighted doorway. She had seen his war council, which meant she had seen the 12 men who surrounded him at all times like a very expensive security perimeter, and where the security perimeter was, the king was near. But she had not been in the same room as him until the East Wing library, on a Thursday that smelled like the kitchen's soup day, when she was supposed to be dusting the upper shelves and he simply walked in. She heard the door. She did not scream. She wanted to note this for the record, for whatever internal record she kept of her own small victories. She heard the door. She registered who it was, from the sound the room made, the way the air seemed to reorganize itself, the way the candle flames on the side table all leaned very slightly in one direction, like they were paying attention, and she did not scream. She turned back to the shelf. The book she was dusting was 300 years old and bound in something she preferred not to think about, and had probably been cursed by at least 2 different people at some point in its history. She focused on it with everything she had. The raven was on his shoulder. She saw this in her peripheral vision. She was not going to look directly at either of them. This was her professional policy and also her survival policy, and they happened to align perfectly in this moment. The raven looked at her. It said 3 words, low and guttural, old as weather, in the language that lived in her chest like a stone she'd been carrying. She's the one. Her hand stopped moving. What did it say? His voice. That was his voice, right there in the library, in the same room as her, directed at her. She had never heard it this close before. It had the quality of something that had not needed to be loud in a very long time. Quiet, the way things get quiet when they have never once been ignored. She had 3 options: lie, run, or deploy her God-given right to pretend this was above her pay grade. Nothing useful, Your Majesty. The raven made a sound like a door closing firmly. The king took 1 step toward her, just 1. The room felt it. The candle flames leaned again. The dust in the air seemed to pause. Try again, he said. The book in her hand was 300 years old, and the binding was probably human, and she was going to focus on that. She was going to think about the binding. She was going to think about the grain of the cover, and the way the gold lettering on the spine had almost completely worn away, and what the title might have said before time ate it. It said, she stopped. She started again. the way you restart an engine in cold weather, firmly, with intention. It said she's the one. That's what it said. I don't know what it means. Lord have mercy on the stupid, but that is literally what came out of its mouth. Silence. The kind of silence that has a weight to it. The king looked at the raven. The raven looked at Naomi. How long have you been able to understand it? The king asked. About 3 weeks, she said. Give or take the first few days where I thought I was losing my mind. The silence that followed was a different kind. The kind that has a shape. The kind you could reach out and touch. He turned and walked out. The raven stayed. It looked at her, head tilting, and said in her mother's language, in the cracked open language of a village that no longer existed, "He has been looking for you since before you were born." She thought about the book, the binding, the worn gold letters. She went back to dusting. That night the raven came to her window. She had not opened the window. It was latched. She found it open anyway, and the raven sitting on the inner sill like it had always been there, like it had simply decided the latch did not apply to it. She sat up in her cot and looked at it. It told her 3 things. The first, there was a spy in the palace, someone on the inner council, someone who had spent 7 years feeding military movements, troop positions, supply routes, all of it, to the northern separatists who had been quietly, patiently, brick by brick, building a case for removing the king from power. 7 years of small pieces of information, nothing dramatic, nothing that looked like betrayal from the outside, just enough to keep the separatists 1 step ahead. 7 years. And the king knew something was wrong, had known for years, could feel it the way old wolves feel weather before it arrives, but could not see the source. The second, the raven had been trying to tell someone this for 11 months. Every maid assigned to the East Wing, every guard who walked past its perch, every council member who happened to stand near it. None of them heard anything but noise. The language it spoke was old enough that no one in the palace recognized it as language at all, except her. She sat with these 2 things for a long moment. Then she said, in the old tongue, quietly, "Who is it?" The raven told her. The name landed in her chest like a key turning in a very old lock. Cold, definitive, the kind of feeling that does not leave room for doubt. Heron Voss, 3rd seat on the War Council. Silver-haired, pleasant-faced, the kind of man who remembered every servant's name and asked about their families. She had met him once in the corridor outside the library, and he had said good morning, and she had said good morning, and she had thought at the time, that is a man who has spent a long time making sure everyone finds him harmless. Now she understood what that was. The raven told her the 3rd thing. She was quiet for a long time after. Outside, the palace settled into its nighttime sounds, the distant change of the guard, the wind off the mountain, the candle on her small table burning low. The 3rd thing was about her village, about the fire, about why it burned. She had known, in the way you know things you have never been told but have always suspected in the back of your chest, that the fire was not an accident. That the border village, small and poor, and speaking its strange old language that nobody outside its walls recognized, had not simply caught fire the way dry wood catches fire, randomly, unluckily. It burned because someone made it burn, because the village sat on a trade route, because the old language was the language of the original Pact Covenant, the one that predated the current territorial lines, and the village elders had been preserving it for generations, without knowing what they were preserving, without knowing that the words in their mouths were the exact words someone powerful and frightened needed to disappear. She did not cry. She had stopped doing that when she was 19, had run out of it the way you run out of a resource you didn't know was finite until it was gone. She said, in the old tongue, very carefully, "Who gave the order?" The raven said, "The same man who has been feeding information to the north for 7 years." She looked at the candle, watched it, the way the flame leaned slightly in the draft from the window the raven had opened without asking. Heron Voss, her last name, her not family. She did not sleep after that. She lay on her cot and looked at the ceiling and did something she had not done in a long time. She thought about her mother. Not the grief of her, not the absence, but the specific physical fact of her, the sound of her voice in the old tongue, the way she moved around their small kitchen, the songs she sang that Naomi had never once asked the meaning of, because they were just sound, just warmth, just the texture of being safe. They were not just songs. She understood that now. They were the covenant words. Her mother had been singing them every day of her life because they needed to be maintained, needed to be spoken aloud regularly, or they faded. Like any living thing, like memory. Her mother had been a keeper without knowing she was keeping anything. Naomi had inherited a language the way you inherit a piece of furniture, without choosing it, without understanding what it is, until the day something happens and you look at it properly for the first time and realize what you're holding. The raven had known. The raven had been sent to find her. Sent forward, it had said. Sent by a man who was very old. She thought about this for a long time. Then she got up, wrapped herself in her work coat, and sat by the window until dawn. Veep! She went to the main corridor where the War Council offices were, and she walked past them slowly, with her bucket, because a maid with a bucket is invisible, and she had spent years making herself exactly that, and she looked at the nameplates on the doors. Third seat. Herren Voss. The door was closed. The light was off. He was not in yet. She walked past, turned, walked back, thought, above my pay grade, thought, he burned my village, kept walking. Num 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 num. At the far end, near the window that looked out over the North Mountain, standing with his back to the corridor, his hands clasped behind him, the raven was on the windowsill. He was not pretending to be doing something else. He was simply standing there. She stopped. He said, without turning, I was told you would come back. I work here, she said. Most people request a transfer. I'm not most people. He turned then. She had been trying not to look at him directly, which was a policy that had lasted approximately 3 weeks and was now clearly over. He was looking at her with the attention of someone who has been waiting, not impatiently, not with any visible tension, but with the settled certainty of a person who knew the waiting was going to end and was simply occupying the time until it did. Gorgeous in all the ways that make you question your own judgment. She noted this the way you note a hazard on the road, not dwelling on it, just acknowledging it's there, keeping your distance accordingly. The raven has spoken to you, he said. Not a question. Yes. About what? She set down her bucket. The cloth on the handle had come loose again. She looked at it. There's a spy on your council, she said. Third seat. He's been feeding your troop movements north for 7 years. He uses the old tongue in his correspondence because no one alive reads it. She paused. Except me, she said. Apparently, the king was very still. His name, she said, and she put it down between them like setting a stone on a table. Herren Voss. A beat. Is your family name, the king said. He is not my family. She said it the way you say things you have rehearsed without meaning to. At dawn, at the window, through the small cold hours when the candle burned out and you sat in the dark with the shape of a truth you've known for a long time, finally taking up its proper space in the room. She said it, and then she left it there, between them, and did not decorate it. The king looked at her, not the way men look at women, not the cartographer's measuring look from the library. Something else, something older, the look of a person recognizing something they thought they'd lost. I know, he said. She waited. I have known for some time that you were not connected to him, the king said. Beyond the name. How long? Since before you arrived. She thought about this. She thought about 33 maids who could not hear the raven. She thought about being the 34th. She thought about the raven saying, he sent me forward. He said, wait for the one who answers back. You were testing me, she said, not angry, just locating the fact, putting it in the right place. I was learning who you were, he said. There is a difference. There isn't really. A pause. No, he said, not really. She picked up her bucket. The handle cloth was fully unwound now. She held it in her fist instead. Practical. Will that be all, Your Majesty? No. She waited again. The raven only stays in the East Wing, he said. It has been there for 11 months. It has not come to my rooms or the council hall or anywhere else in the palace. Only the East Wing. I know, she said. I work here. It has come to your window at night. She had not told him that. She looked at the raven. The raven looked entirely unconcerned. Yes, she said. It has never done that before. Not for anyone. She thought about what the raven had told her, about her mother's songs, about words that needed to be kept alive by being spoken, about a girl who had stopped speaking for 2 years and then, in a pre-dawn corridor with a leaking bucket, had opened her mouth and answered back. What do you want from me? She asked. He was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that costs something. I need you to testify, he said, to the council. What the raven told you, in the old tongue. If you speak it aloud in council, in the presence of witnesses, it becomes part of the official record. There is an old law, older than the current council structure, older than most of what stands in this palace, that says covenant testimony in the old tongue cannot be challenged or suppressed. Herren Voss knows this. It is why he chose to communicate in that language. He thought no one could use it against him. She understood. It was the raven's language, the village language, her mother's songs, all the same thing, all pieces of the same old covenant that predated borders and councils and kings. He thought it was safe, she said, because the only people who knew the language were gone. Yes, she looked out the window, the North Mountain, cold and permanent, and not caring at all about any of this. He made sure of that, she said. The king said nothing. He did not say I'm sorry. He did not say I know what he took from you. He did not fill the space with words that would have made it easier for him and worse for her. He just let it sit. That was, she would think later, the first thing about him that felt real. Not the title, not the shoulders-like-a-wall physical fact of him, not the raven or the mystery or any of it. The fact that he did not try to smooth it over. She spent them in the East Wing, scrubbing floors and talking to the raven in her dead language, practicing the way you practice something you are going to have to perform in public. Not for confidence, she was not going to be confident, that was not available to her right now, but for precision. She needed the words to come out right. The covenant language had rules, structure. It was not just vocabulary, it was syntax and intonation, and the specific way certain words sat next to each other, and she had learned it the way a child learns a song, by repetition and proximity, not by understanding. She was going to have to understand it now. The raven was patient. It said the words. She repeated them. It corrected her. She tried again. Dara from the laundry wing asked if she was all right at dinner on the second night. I'm preparing for something, Naomi said. Good preparing or bad preparing? Naomi thought about it. I genuinely don't know yet. Dara saved her the end piece of bread. She ate it standing by the kitchen door, looking at nothing, running covenant words under her breath like counting beads. No, 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 no. She stood in the doorway of the great council chamber in her work clothes. She did not own anything else, and she was not going to borrow something because borrowed clothes felt like pretending to be someone she wasn't, and what she was about to do required her to be exactly and completely herself. And looked at the 12 men at the long table. 12 men who could destroy her career, her record, her position in the palace, with one collective decision. 12 men who would not understand a word of what she was about to say, and would have to take the sworn translation of a palace linguist who had been briefed at dawn and looked like he had not slept since. At the far end of the table, the king, the raven, was on the back of his chair. Third seat on the left, Herren Voss, silver-haired, pleasant-faced. He looked at her the way you look at something that is not supposed to be there, and she watched him understand. The slowest, most controlled understanding she had ever seen on a human face, like water finding cracks in stone. that she was the thing that had ended him. She walked to the center of the room. She opened her mouth. She spoke in her mother's language. She spoke the way her mother had sung, not performing it, not making it beautiful for the room, just saying it cleanly, with precision, the way the raven had taught her, the way the words needed to be said to be legally binding under a covenant law older than everyone sitting in this room combined. She said what the raven had told her. She said the dates, the routes, the movements, the correspondence, the words Herren Voss had written in the language he thought was safe, because he had made sure the people who knew it were gone. He had missed one. She did not look at him while she spoke. She looked at the raven. The raven watched her back, still as stone, with the absolute attention of something that has been waiting for this exact moment for 11 months and is now watching it arrive. When she finished, the room was completely silent. The linguist cleared his throat and began his translation. She walked back to the door. The king's voice stopped her. Naomi. She turned. He was looking at her from the end of the table, and there was nothing on his face she could easily name. Not gratitude exactly, not apology, something more complicated, something that had been a long time forming. "Stay in the East Wing," he said. "I wasn't planning to leave," she said. "I know." She left. No. Herren Voss was removed from the council by that evening. She did not watch it happen. She was in the East Wing with her bucket, doing the corridor she had been halfway through when Dara called her for dinner 2 days ago. The raven found her around dusk, it said, in her mother's language, in the language that had come back to her from the dead like a bird through a closed window. "It's done. I know," she said. It said, "He will answer for the village." She pressed the brush against the stone. Let the motion of it fill her hands. "Good," she said, and meant it simply, without the performance of more complicated things. Just good. Just yes. Just the small, clean fact of it. The raven settled on the chandelier above her. They stayed like that for a while. The maid and the bird, in the East Wing, in the hour before the palace lit its evening candles, in the specific quiet of a thing that has just stopped moving. The king came to the East Wing 3 days later, not at dawn, in the evening, which was unusual. She was finishing the last section of the corridor she had been systematically working through for 3 weeks, and she heard the door at the far end open and knew by the way the air moved who it was. She kept working. He stopped a few feet away and said, "You were going to tell me, even if I hadn't asked." She thought about it. Yes. Why? She sat back on her heels and looked up at him. He was not in his council clothes. He was in something plainer, darker, the kind of thing that did not announce itself. He looked, without the weight of formal clothing, like a man who was tired in the specific way of people who have been carrying something for a very long time. "Because someone should have," she said, "a long time ago, someone should have said his name out loud, a long time ago, and the only reason no one did is because he made sure there was no one left who could." A pause. "He didn't count on the raven," she said. "No," the king said. "He didn't." She looked at the raven, which had appeared on the chandelier above them without either of them noticing. It was watching them with the contentment of a bird who has accomplished the thing it was sent to accomplish and is now simply present. "How old is it?" she asked. "Older than I am. That's very old. Yes." She stood up. Her knees ached from the stone floor. She did not make a face about this. She picked up her bucket. "You sent it forward," she said. 80 years ago, the raven told me." He did not look surprised that she knew. He did not look much of anything, except present, fully, carefully, here. "I knew the language was going to disappear," he said. "I knew there were people trying to make it disappear. I knew there was going to come a time when something would happen that only a speaker could address. So you sent the raven to wait. I sent it to look. For me specifically. For whoever was left." She thought about that. The difference between being found and being the only one remaining. They were not always different things. "You could not have known it would be me," she said. "No," he said. "I hoped it would be someone. I did not know who." The corridor was quiet around them. The candles in the wall sconces had just been lit by the evening round of servants, and the light was the warm, imprecise kind that makes everything look slightly less like what it is. She looked at the bucket. The handlecloth had fallen off completely. She was just holding the bare metal, which was cold against her palm. "I need a new bucket," she said. Something crossed his face. That thing that was not a smile, but was the country adjacent to it. "I'll see to it," he said. "Thank you, Your Majesty." She moved toward the exit of the corridor. The raven watched her go. Behind her, the king said, "Naomi." She stopped, did not turn immediately, gave herself one breath, turned. "The East Wing will need a permanent assignment," he said. "The position has been unclear for nearly a year. I'd like it settled." "I see," she said. "I would like it to be you." She looked at him. He looked at her. The raven looked at both of them with the expression of a very old creature who has seen enough of this specific type of scene to find it both tiresome and quietly moving. "I already work here," she said. "I know. I'd like to make it official." "Why?" The question cost him something. She saw it land. "Because the raven trusts you," he said. "And the raven has been right about people longer than I have been alive. And because—" He stopped. Started again. "Because I would like you to stay. I would like to know that you are not going to request a transfer." She thought about 33 people who had been moved to places not well documented. She thought about her mother singing words she didn't know were important. She thought about a bucket with a broken handle and a pre-dawn corridor, and the first morning she heard something she had no business understanding, and answered it back anyway. She thought about the fact that for the first time in 5 years, she was somewhere she had not been planning to leave. "I told you," she said. "I wasn't planning to." She walked out of the corridor. Behind her, she heard the raven say, in her mother's language, in the old tongue, in the covenant words that had outlasted a village and a fire and 2 years of silence, one word. Finally, she got a new bucket on Wednesday. It arrived outside her door in the servant quarters, unmarked, with a note in handwriting that was formal and careful, and had the quality of someone who had been writing official documents for so long that ordinary handwriting had gone slightly stiff in the same way. East Wing, permanent assignment. Effective immediately. She folded the note, put it in her coat pocket, went to work. The East Wing was quiet in the pre-dawn the way it always was. Stone and cold and the particular hush of a place that has been waiting. The chandelier in the main corridor. The books in the library with their worn spines. The window at the far end where the North Mountain sat outside like it had been put there specifically to make everything look temporary by comparison. She started with the baseboard near the chandelier, same as always. The raven was already there. It tilted its head. She said, in her mother's language, in the language she was no longer going to leave unused inside her, like a room with the door shut. "Good morning." The raven said, "Good morning." She dipped her brush. She worked. Outside, the palace was waking up, the distant sound of the kitchen fires starting, the early guards changing, the slow organizational noise of a large place beginning another day. Inside the East Wing, it was still just her and the raven, and the cold floor, and the work that needed doing. She realized, not invisible here. She was not invisible, and she was not hiding, and she had not packed her things, and she had not left before anyone could learn her name. She was here, in the East Wing, where she had apparently always been going. She saw the king most mornings after that. Not dramatically, not in the way stories describe these things, with music and significance and the awareness that something is beginning. He came to the East Wing because the raven was there, and the raven was there because she was there, and so the three of them ended up occupying the same hallway at dawn with some regularity, and it was less like a story and more like a schedule. He learned not to offer conversation before she'd had the chance to get her bucket organized. She learned that he said things plainly, and without softening them, and that this was not coldness. It was the opposite. It was the specific honesty of someone who had been lied to enough times that he had given up on the cushioning that most people used. The raven translated when it needed to. Mostly it didn't need to. Mostly they found they could speak directly. "You know 3 words in the old tongue," she told him one morning. "4, he said. Which ones? He said them. She corrected his pronunciation on one. He tried again. She said, without thinking about it, better. He looked at her with that thing that was not a smile, but kept hovering in the same neighborhood. My mother would have liked you, he said. She didn't know what to do with that, so she went back to her work. The raven on the chandelier said nothing. It was, for once, entirely quiet. She thought, that's interesting. The raven always has something to say. She thought, even the raven is giving us space. She kept working, but something in her chest had shifted, very slightly, the way a stone shifts when water has been moving around it for a long time, quietly, without any one moment you could point to as the cause. She was still not a person who owned things she couldn't pack in 3 minutes. But she was thinking about it. Spring came to the North Mountain. Not warmly. Spring in the high territories was less a season than a grudging negotiation between ice and mud, the mountain giving up its cold by centimeters, while the valley below stubbornly held on to winter for another 6 weeks. She learned this from the raven, who had opinions about weather. She learned the palace's seasonal rhythms, the way the kitchen changed its menus, the way the war council's meetings shifted to the afternoons as the days got longer, the way the east wing caught the morning light differently in late spring, and the chandelier threw patterns on the wall she hadn't seen before. She liked the patterns. She stayed after her shift one morning to watch them move as the sun came up, just sitting on the floor, back against the stone, watching light. Something she had not done, just sat, just watched, just let a moment be what it was, in longer than she could name. The king found her like that. He looked at her, she looked at the light. The raven looked at both. He sat down on the floor next to her. This was not a thing she had expected. The Alpha King of the Northern Territories, sovereign of the Packlands, keeper of the Old Covenant, sitting on the stone floor of the East Wing hallway, watching chandelier patterns with the 34th Maid. She did not say anything about it. He didn't either. They watched the light move. After a while he said, very quietly, in 3 words she recognized from the old tongue, the 4 he had learned, the ones she had heard her mother say at the end of every day before bed, the ones she had not known the meaning of until now. He said, you are found. She watched the light on the stone. She thought about a village that burned, about 2 years of silence, about a bucket with a broken handle and 33 people who couldn't hear the bird, and the one morning she answered back, because the East Wing was quiet, and the alternative was her own thoughts, and she was, as it turned out, someone who answered back. She said, in her mother's language, the language she was done leaving unused, I know, and she did not say anything else, and neither did he, and the raven was, for perhaps the first time in its long and opinionated life, completely silent. The light moved on the wall. Outside, the mountain was giving up its winter, slowly, by degrees. She was still here. End of story.